this morning I want to talk to you about the impact that your trauma bonds are having on your purpose and meaning in life. But before we get into that, what is a trauma bond? Like you're probably thinking, or you might be thinking, let me correct that. You might be thinking, I don't have any trauma. I've never been to war. I've never been in a car accident. I've never been rescued from a burning building. I don't have trauma. Everybody has trauma. These trauma bonds, and I call them bonds because it's literally bonding you to a story that you've created within yourself. These trauma bonds literally get formed anytime something happens that you didn't like, didn't agree with, or didn't line up with your sense of values in the world from the time that you're very, very young, and you created a story around that. You started telling yourself something about that, right? So, as an example, you may have heard me say this before. If you're a little kid and you're playing with your favorite toy and your older sibling comes up and grabs the toy and steals it and runs away, and you're there crying, you're looking for help from your parent, it doesn't come, and you start creating a story. I'm irrelevant, I don't matter. That creates a trauma bond. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking for validation in the world that you don't matter. And when the validation isn't necessarily there, you start creating circumstances for yourself, being that you are a co creator of your own experience of reality. You create experiences for yourself where you validate this narrative that you don't matter, right? Now, another example could be you see one parent beating on another parent, and it totally conflicts with your sense of what's right and wrong in life. So, with that, you start creating a story, this story based in fear, this story based in untrustworthiness of other people, and then your relationships start copying that. And then you start creating these circumstances, you start creating these relationships that validate this fear that you have. You have a fear of relationships. Or, I'll give you one more example. You see your parents fighting over money. They have this big argument. Maybe one of them's trying to balance the bills or do the budget or something like that, and the other one's on them, and they end up in this huge fight, and it's over money. Or you see yourself or your siblings, or maybe one of your parents wants something and the other one's like, well, you can't have that because we don't have the money, and you're aware of that. It's soaking in. It's when you're young, your subconscious is wide open, so it's permeating straight into your subconscious. Now, the relationship that you have with money as you grow forward is that there's not enough, that you always have to struggle for it, that you can't have the things that you want because that's the experience you created. That is a trauma bond. Right now, you're probably starting to understand the idea of how we all have these trauma bonds that we basically create our experience of reality through. So, how are these trauma bonds impacting your purpose on the planet? It's really important for me to state at this point that you may be in a role right now that is very much aligned with your purpose, but you also may not know that, because when you are operating from within a trauma bond, which most everybody is until you've done the work to release that, you may not be aware of it because you are operating from a place of survival. Even if you have the best job on the planet, if you're operating from that place of survival, wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep. You're working to make money, and then on the weekend you do something to distract yourself from the fact that this is your life. It feels like a grind because you're not in any flow. You cannot be in flow when there is no creative energy. When you have that, like that creative energy that is part of your purpose and your meaning, when that's not present when you are in that survival. And let me tell you why. Because we are hardwired to operate under a very strict set of guidelines regarding our survivability, right? That's how we're still here on the planet. There was a lot of threats as we came through the ages as humanity, right? And these threats have us operating from a very specific set of parameters or guidelines, if you will. Now, the thing to keep in mind is primitive man, primitive person, as like a hunter, has a very specific way of doing things. When they strayed from that, not only did they not win the hunt, but they very possibly died trying to achieve the outcome. So there was no space for creativity in survival. When your survival depends on it, you don't have the creative expression. You don't have the ability to say within that realm, I'm going to try something new, because if that something new doesn't work and you fail, one, you don't win the outcome, and two, you very well lose your life in the process. Now, we're living in a totally different world right now, but we're still operating under the same hardwired parameters, if you will. So the fact of the matter is, when our survival mechanism, that hardwired survival process within us, is activated, call it the sympathetic nervous system, call it fight or flight, call it whatever you want, but when that's are living in a low grade activation of the sympathetic nervous system. You wake up, you're immediately in stress because your alarm's going off. It's dragging you out of sleep before your body is ready to. You're breaking a cycle. You're then rushing to get yourself ready to go to work. You're stuck in traffic. That's frustrating. You're activated. You're activated in fight or flight. You're at work. You've got deadlines to meet. There's stress placed on you. You're activated all day long. You're low grade activated. It's not as if there's this huge rush of adrenaline like you're facing a saber-toothed cat, but you're activated. Like, this sympathetic nervous system is constantly active. You're super fatigued all the time because your adrenals are not meant to be operating at that level all the time. So then you get home, you want to relax. You crack open a beer, or you pour yourself a glass of wine, or you get yourself a shot of whiskey, and you sit and you're drinking alcohol. That keeps you activated. You put on Netflix, you put on your favorite show, you put on your favorite movie. It's probably action related. That keeps you activated. You're going to bed with an activated sympathetic nervous system, right? You're starting to see the pattern here, right? You don't sleep very well. Your body doesn't get the chance to regenerate at the level that it should during your offline hours. You're staying activated. You wake up and the cycle is rinse and repeat. You are in survival. You may have a job or a career that's aligned with your purpose and meaning. You may have been lucky enough to have connected with that and fallen into it. A lot of people aren't. Maybe you are. Maybe you're doing something that you know you love, but you just feel like something still isn't right. That feeling of not quite right, that hollow feeling, that empty feeling inside, that feeling of stress, that is because you're living in survival and you're disconnected from your purpose or meaning. You can be doing something that is in purpose, in meaning for you, but still not be connected to that. The lack of connection is the survival. So how do you get about that? What is keeping you stuck in those trauma bonds? And what is keeping you from really connecting with your meaning and purpose and full creative expression in life? It is absolutely recreating yourself from those traumas. That's just a fact. So what we do, we go back and we start releasing and rewriting and redefining ourselves. Right? We find and neutralize the trauma. Now, there's very specific ways of doing this. Neutralizing those stories from the past so that you're not low grade recreating yourself from those stories anymore. Now, all of a sudden, you're in a position where your relationships start to improve because you're not looking for validation of abuse in your life or mistrust in your life. Now, all of a sudden, your relationship to money improves because you're not looking for validation that there isn't enough to go around. Now, all of a sudden, your health starts to improve. Everything starts to open up and flow because you're aligning with that creative expression. And in that creative expression of who you are and what it is that you're meant to do, your meaning and purpose come online. And like I said, it may be where you are right now. You may be lucky enough to have fallen into that. Hopefully you are. But if you're not, you have the strength to make a change. You now have the reserves within yourself, and the flow is so powerful that you can just jump out of where you are and start doing what it is that you were meant to be doing on this planet. Maybe the transition isn't so direct and easy. Maybe you've got to stay where you are and you start learning, you start dabbling, you start, like a hobby type thing, that because it's your heart path, it's your purpose, it's what you're here for, the expression just blows up on you. Like, and then you can leave what you're doing and fall into that completely. That's the ideal situation. And we're in this situation now where you have the option to do that. But it all begins with doing the internal work, neutralizing those stories that you're continually creating yourself from. Now, you may have seen I uploaded a video yesterday where I was talking about the light of the stars. This is relevant here. The starlight that you see overnight, science has proven that that starlight has such a long way to travel that when the star pushes that light out, it takes so long to get here. By the time it's entering your retinas, by the time you're seeing it, that star might not be producing light anymore. It might be dead. It might be gone from the universe, right? The point of that is it's a macro to the micro of our life, as above, so below, right? So the important thing to keep in mind here is that what you're experiencing right now is yesterday's thoughts. It's from who you were yesterday. It's from who you were creating yourself from yesterday. Now, if you want a different expression tomorrow, you have to create a different thought today. Most people that haven't done the work are falling into the trap of recreating themselves based on what they're perceiving right now, which is the thought from yesterday. You see how that works? The universe is dropping breadcrumbs for us to step into self-mastery, to really gain a foothold in life, to really start understanding. So for you, if you really want to start leaving behind that survival mechanism, that constant activation of your nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, that constant fight or flight, that constant gnawing feeling that something isn't quite right, if you want to leave that behind and truly start to embrace a life where you feel like a fucking boss, where you feel like a king, where you're so relaxed because you trust and know so deeply that everything is working for you, nothing is happening to you, it's all happening for you to become the greater version of yourself. When you want to get to that point, there is a very definitive path to walk. Now, I'm here to help guide you on that path. That's what I do. As an experienced and accredited coach, as an experienced and accredited E4 trauma method coach, I can guide you along that path. We can go and neutralize those stories so that you can write a story that serves where you want to go and completely eliminates that whole survival mechanism. And now you're waking up with a smile on your face. You're waking up earlier because you're more energized. You're waking up earlier, more energized because you've slept well. You've slept well because you haven't gone to bed with an activated sympathetic nervous system. You haven't got an activated sympathetic nervous system because you've been so fucking relaxed throughout the day that there's no need for survival to be activated. Now, when it activates, it's like coffee. If you stop drinking coffee for 6 weeks and then have a cup of coffee, bing, you're going to feel it, right? You're going to feel that caffeine. It's just right there. It's the same thing. When you turn off your sympathetic nervous system and learn how to relax into the parasympathetic nervous system, learn how to relax in life, guess what happens? When there is something potentially happening in the world that directly impacts you, you are so much more in tune with it. You can feel it. And then you can respond accordingly because you're now in control of your nervous system rather than your nervous system hijacking you and being in control of you. That's what we're aiming for. And that's what I'm wanting to help guide you to, because I can tell you from experience how beautiful it feels to live that way. Having lived constantly with this not quite right, this hollow feeling, this stressed feeling, this constantly activated sympathetic nervous system, bags under your eyes, you're constantly feeling sapped of energy, your adrenals are always activated, your relationships aren't working because you don't trust anybody. You might be doing the most amazing job in the world. It might be your heart path. You might be in a career that is the reason you were put here, but you can't connect with it. And you can't connect with it because you're in stress. There is no creative expression. So when you're ready to start really feeling that purpose and meaning in life and letting go all of that other shit, reach out. Let's have a chat. Let's see if it's right for us to do some work together. I'm not going to give you answers. I'm not going to heal you. I'm not going to save you. I am here to help guide you into the strongest, most powerful version of you because I know how that feels. Have a beautiful day, friends, and I will see you all soon.